I trusted my parents with my life until they tried to take it. Every year, 3,400 house fire deaths occur in the U.S. But what if the danger comes from inside your own home? This is how I survived when my own parents became my biggest threat. My name is Madison Chen, and 3 months ago, I thought I had the perfect family. We lived in a beautiful suburban home in Ohio, where my father Robert worked as an insurance executive, and my mother Linda had been a nurse before becoming a stay-at-home mom. To the outside world, we were the ideal American family. Dad always bragged about me to the neighbors, how I'd gotten into state university on a partial scholarship, how I was majoring in business, how I was their perfect daughter. But perfection came with a price I didn't understand until it was almost too late. Growing up, I thought every parent tracked their child's location 24/7. I thought it was normal that my bank account required both parents' signatures for any withdrawal over $50. I believed it was just loving concern when they monitored my social media accounts and required me to share all my passwords. When I came home for summer break after my freshman year, those old patterns felt suffocating, but I told myself it was just an adjustment period. My parents had always been controlling, but they disguised it as care. They knew where I was every moment through tracking apps on my phone. They had access to my college email account to help with important documents. My college friends were never welcome at our house. Mom always found excuses why they couldn't visit, and Dad would create awkward situations whenever I brought anyone home. The few times I'd tried to stay overnight at a friend's house, they'd call repeatedly with emergencies that required me to come home immediately. The red flags were there, but I'd been conditioned to see them as love. When you grow up in that environment, control feels like security, manipulation feels like guidance, and isolation feels like protection. Everything changed on June 15th, exactly 3 months after my 18th birthday. I was cleaning out my grandmother's old room, she'd passed away 2 years earlier, when I found a manila envelope tucked behind her dresser. Inside were legal documents that would shatter my entire world. The papers showed that my grandmother had left me a substantial inheritance, $400,000, meant to be held in trust until my 18th birthday. According to the documents, I should have gained access to the money 3 months ago, but I'd never heard about any inheritance. My hands shook as I read through bank statements, showing regular withdrawals over the past 2 years. Someone had been accessing the account since Grandma's death, spending thousands on home renovations, luxury vacations, and my father's new BMW. At the bottom of the stack, I found what made my blood run cold: forged documents bearing what was supposed to be my signature, authorizing the expenditures. My own parents had been stealing from me for 2 years. That evening, I sat across from them at dinner, the documents hidden in my backpack upstairs. I watched Dad cut his steak, talking about some client meeting, while Mom discussed the new landscaping they'd installed last month. Every word felt like a lie. Every smile felt like a mask. How long had they been planning this? How long had they seen me, not as their daughter, but as their ticket to a better lifestyle? I waited until we finished eating. Then I pulled out the papers and placed them on the table. I found Grandma's inheritance documents. I said quietly, "I think we need to talk." The change in their faces was instant and terrifying. Dad's fork clattered to his plate. Mom's face went completely white. For a moment, no one spoke. "Madison, honey," Mom began, her voice artificially sweet. "You don't understand what you're looking at." $400,000, I interrupted. Money that was supposed to come to me 3 months ago. Money you've been spending on yourselves. Dad recovered first, his expression hardening. "You ungrateful little brat. Do you have any idea how much it cost us to raise you? 18 years of food, clothing, housing, education. That's called being a parent, Dad. It doesn't give you the right to steal from me." "Steal?" Mom's voice rose an octave. "We're your parents. That money was left to help secure your future, and we've been managing it responsibly. By forging my signature? By buying yourself a BMW?" I pulled out my phone, heart pounding. "I already contacted the bank, and I have an appointment with a lawyer tomorrow." That's when everything changed. Dad stood up so fast his chair toppled backward. "You called a lawyer? Against your own family? You stole from me. You forged my signature. What else was I supposed to do?" "You're not going anywhere," Dad said, his voice deadly calm. "And you're certainly not meeting with any lawyer. You can't stop me. I'm 18. I'm an adult." Mom started crying then, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage and panic. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? You'd destroy your own family over money? You destroyed our family when you decided to steal from me." I stood up from the table, my legs trembling. "I'm leaving tonight. I'm staying at my friend Jessica's house, and tomorrow I'm meeting with the lawyer. If you return the money and make this right, maybe we can work through this. But I won't live in a house with people who see me as a bank account." The look that passed between my parents in that moment should have been my final warning. But I was 18, scared, and operating on pure adrenaline. I missed the silent communication, the way Dad's jaw clenched, the way Mom's tears stopped as suddenly as they'd started. "Let's all calm down," Dad said suddenly, his voice eerily normal. "This is a family matter. We should handle it as a family. Why don't we watch a movie together? Talk about this tomorrow, when everyone's had time to think." I should have recognized the trap. I should have grabbed my bag and left immediately. Instead, I thought maybe they were ready to be reasonable. "I don't want to watch a movie. I want to pack my things and go to Jessica's." "Please, sweetheart," Mom said, reaching for my hand. "Just one movie, for family." Something in her tone made me pause. Maybe it was exhaustion from the emotional confrontation. Maybe it was a lifetime of conditioning to please them. Against my better judgment, I agreed to 30 minutes of television before leaving. Within an hour, I could barely keep my eyes open. The drowsiness hit me like a truck, which was strange because I'd never been tired that early in the evening. By 10 p.m., I could barely walk straight. I mumbled something about going to bed early and stumbled upstairs to my room. I fell into the deepest sleep I'd ever experienced. At 2:17 a.m., I woke up to the sound of our smoke alarm screaming. The first thing I noticed was the smell, thick, acrid smoke seeping under my bedroom door. The second thing I noticed was that my door wouldn't open. I turned the handle, pushed, then threw my whole weight against it. Nothing. It was locked from the outside. Panic shot through me like ice water. I ran to my windows to climb out, but my hands hit wood. In the dim light from the smoke alarm's blinking LED, I could see fresh pine boards nailed across both windows. The nail heads were bright silver, recently driven through the wood into my window frames. My parents had nailed my windows shut. The smoke was getting thicker. I could hear crackling from downstairs, but strangely, I couldn't hear my parents' voices. No calls for help, no sounds of evacuation. The house felt eerily quiet, except for the smoke alarm and the growing sound of flames. That's when the full horror hit me. They weren't trying to save me. They were trying to kill me. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? My house is on fire and my parents nailed my windows shut. I can't get out. Ma'am, I need you to stay calm. Are you sure about the windows? Yes, there are fresh hammer marks. They want me to die. The smoke is getting worse. Ma'am, I'm dispatching fire department to your location. Are your parents in the house? I don't know. I can't hear them anywhere. They locked my door from the outside and nailed boards over my windows. Please hurry. The 911 operator stayed on the line with me as I desperately searched my room for anything to help. In my closet, I found one of Dad's old hammers that he'd left behind during some home project. With smoke burning my lungs and my vision starting to blur, I attacked the boards on my window with everything I had. The nails were driven deep, but desperation gave me strength I didn't know I possessed. I managed to pry one board loose just as I heard sirens outside. Through the gap, I could see red lights reflecting off the neighbor's house. The fire department ladder reached my window just as I pulled the second board free. A firefighter climbed up and helped me down, my body shaking uncontrollably as fresh air hit my lungs. Where are your parents? The firefighter asked as paramedics rushed toward us. I don't know, I coughed. I haven't heard them since the fire started. That's when I saw Dad's BMW pulling into our driveway. My parents got out, and their performance was Oscar-worthy. Mom screamed and ran toward me, tears streaming down her face. Dad was shouting at the firefighters, demanding to know if I was okay. We weren't home, Mom sobbed, clutching me in what appeared to be relief. We were at the 24-hour grocery store. The neighbor called us. The smoke alarms must have malfunctioned, Dad told the fire chief. We tried to install new ones last week. We had no idea Madison was trapped. I stared at them in shock. The performance was so convincing that for a moment I almost believed them myself. Almost, but I still had Dad's hammer in my hand. And the 911 recording had captured every word I'd screamed about being trapped deliberately. At the hospital, while doctors treated me for smoke inhalation, police interviewed me about what happened. I told them everything: the inheritance theft, the confrontation, the suspicious drowsiness, waking up trapped. Officer Martinez took detailed notes and assured me they'd investigate thoroughly. When my parents arrived at the hospital, they maintained their devastated parent act perfectly. They held my hands, cried about how grateful they were that I survived, and expressed confusion about my claims regarding the windows. Madison's been under a lot of stress, Dad explained to the police. Starting college, financial pressures. She's been having some wild theories about our family lately. We're just grateful she's safe. But their story started falling apart within hours. The fire investigator found the hammer I'd used, with my fingerprints and fresh wood fibers on it. More importantly, they found the boards I'd pried off my windows, with fresh nail holes and metal shavings that proved they'd been recently installed. Hardware store receipts found in Dad's car showed he'd purchased the boards, nails, and a new hammer that afternoon. The same afternoon as our confrontation. Detective Sarah Morrison was assigned to my case. She specialized in domestic violence and attempted murder. And she told me later that my parents' story raised red flags immediately. In 20 years of investigating house fires, she said, I've never seen parents so calm about their daughter nearly dying. Most parents are hysterical, demanding answers, blaming themselves. Your parents seemed more concerned with controlling the narrative. The blood tests came back, showing prescription sleep medication in my system. Medication that wasn't prescribed to me. When detectives obtained a warrant to search the house, they found the bottle of pills in my mother's medicine cabinet, with 2 missing from the previous day's count. But the most damning evidence came from their digital footprints. Police recovered deleted text messages between my parents from the night of our confrontation. Dad to Mom, 9:47 p.m. She's going to ruin us. We can't let her destroy everything we've built. Mom to Dad, 9:52 p.m. What if there was an accident? House fires happen all the time. Dad to Mom, 10:15 p.m. Insurance would cover everything, including her college fund policy. Google search history from Dad's laptop showed searches made earlier that evening. How long smoke inhalation unconsciousness? Accidental house fire versus murder charges, and life insurance payout after fire death. They had also taken out a $500,000 life insurance policy on me 6 months earlier, which I'd never known about. As the investigation deepened, more disturbing facts emerged. My grandmother's death 2 years earlier, which had been attributed to natural causes, was reopened for investigation. Financial records showed my parents had isolated her from other family members in her final months and had gained power of attorney over her affairs shortly before her death. Neighbors began coming forward with observations they'd previously dismissed. Mrs. Patterson, who lived next door, remembered hearing hammering from our house the afternoon of the fire. I thought they were doing home repairs, she said, but now I realize the timing is suspicious. Other neighbors described my parents as controlling and obsessed with appearances. They always seemed too perfect, said Mr. Williams from across the street. Madison was never allowed to play with other kids freely. There was always some rule or restriction. My parents were arrested and charged with first-degree attempted murder, elder abuse related to my grandmother's case, fraud for the inheritance theft, and insurance fraud for the life insurance policies they'd taken out without my knowledge. The trial began 4 months later. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. They played the 911 recording in court, and I watched several jury members wipe away tears as they heard my desperate screams about being trapped. The forensic evidence was undeniable. Fresh hammer marks on my window frames, boards with recent nail holes, hardware store receipts, and the sleeping medication in my blood. When I testified, I spoke directly to the jury about growing up under my parents' control, the inheritance discovery, and the horror of waking up trapped in a burning room. I explained how their love had been a disguise for financial exploitation and how they'd been willing to murder me rather than face the consequences of their theft. My parents' defense attorney tried to paint me as an ungrateful daughter who'd misinterpreted an accident, but the evidence was overwhelming. The text messages, search history, and financial records painted a clear picture of premeditation. During cross-examination, Both parents contradicted each other multiple times. Dad claimed they'd been installing new window security measures for my safety, while Mom testified that they'd been planning to replace the windows entirely. Neither could explain why they'd nail boards over windows from the inside or why they'd drugged me beforehand. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours, guilty on all counts. Dad was sentenced to life without parole. Mom received life with the possibility of parole after 25 years. The inheritance money was returned to me, along with additional damages of $200,000 from their assets. The life insurance companies voided the policies they'd taken out on me and cooperated fully with authorities. The case made national news and sparked conversations about financial abuse of young adults and the warning signs of family violence. Legislators in Ohio proposed Madison's Law, which would enhance penalties for attempted murder involving family members and require additional safeguards for inheritance and trust accounts. Recovery wasn't immediate or easy. For months after the fire, I couldn't sleep in rooms with closed doors. The smell of smoke from fireplaces or barbecues would trigger panic attacks that left me gasping for air. I jumped at every unexpected sound and found it impossible to trust authority figures, even benevolent ones like doctors or professors. The PTSD was real and debilitating. I had to take a semester off school and work with a trauma specialist who helped me understand that my hypervigilance was a normal response to betrayal by the people who were supposed to protect me. Slowly, with professional help and the support of chosen family, friends who became more like siblings than my biological parents had ever been, I began to heal. I returned to college with additional security measures and academic support. Learning to trust took time, but I eventually formed my first healthy romantic relationship with someone who understood boundaries and respected my healing process. 3 years later, I bought my own home with state-of-the-art security systems and multiple exit routes from every room. I'd learned that safety wasn't about having perfect parents or a picture-perfect family. It was about creating an environment where I could thrive without fear. But the most meaningful part of my recovery was finding purpose in my pain. I began speaking at domestic violence conferences and college safety seminars, sharing my story to help others recognize the warning signs of family financial abuse. My case had helped investigators solve other similar crimes, and I testified in support of legislative changes that would better protect young adults from predatory family members. I changed my major to criminal justice and eventually went to law school, specializing in domestic violence prosecution. Every case I worked gave me a chance to be the advocate I'd wished for during my darkest moments. Today, 10 years later, I'm a successful prosecutor who's helped convict dozens of perpetrators of family violence. I have a loving partner who supports my work and understands my past without trying to fix me. I've built a chosen family of friends, mentors, and colleagues who celebrate my successes and support me through challenges. My biological parents remain in prison. They've attempted to contact me through lawyers, claiming they've found religion and want forgiveness. I haven't responded, and I don't plan to. Forgiveness is personal, and healing doesn't require reconciliation with people who tried to murder you for money. I survived because I refused to be silenced, even when my own parents tried to silence me permanently. The truth found its way to the surface through 911 recordings, forensic evidence, and digital trails they thought they'd covered. Your family should be your safety net, not your trap. If you're reading this and recognizing patterns of control, financial manipulation, or threats in your own family, please know that you deserve better. Trust your instincts, document everything, and don't be afraid to seek help from professionals who can guide you safely away from danger. Recovery isn't just about surviving, it's about building a life where you can thrive, surrounded by people who want the best for you, not the worst. Sometimes the family you choose becomes more real than the family you're born into. And sometimes the best revenge is living well, safely and authentically, despite their attempts to destroy you.